Tuesday, December 3rd. Right. Today is Tuesday, December 13th, 2022. It is now 12:09 p.m. and we will call this meeting into order.
Thank you, Ravonda. I will share the agenda on the screen. There's really only a few topics for the day. We're going to be approving our final bills for 2022. And then I know Michelle has planned some final updates on the ADLN, and then we will hear more details about the revisions to her contract. So that's what we're looking at today. And our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the November meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I'm just going to skip ahead to the financial report. So we have an invoice from Chris Shale's office, from a final invoice from BFJ, an invoice from me for my services, and those are the new invoices this month. We still need to pay Kate Hedgeman's invoice from last month, but I have the 4 relevant checks in a blue folder in the HCDPA mailbox, and I see someone waving it. Great. With the relevant invoices associated with each check attached to it. So those are the bills. Oh, and I suppose I should show you pardon me, y'all, this is a funny way to do things. Our reconciliation.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey,
do you have the invoice from the city?
oh, I do have the invoice from the city, and that's a question that I have. So what I realized is that I have not ordered checks for the Housing Trust Fund account, and so I can't write a check from that account. What we could do is either wait and I can order the checks today and wait and write the check, though it would probably come in the new year. Or that's right. So the board did the invoice from the city to reimburse the city from the Housing Trust Fund account for Michelle's salary for the second half of this year for Q3 and Q4 was shared with the board yesterday.
So just there's 2 invoices from the city, one from Q2, and that comes from ADLN funds.
Ah,
And that would be really great to get approved today so we can close everything out for enterprise.
that's right. Yeah, so we can certainly approve that one today.
Yeah.
I'll just circulate a check before I go out of town.
The Q3 one from the Housing Trust Fund, that's okay. I think if that waits until the new year,
Okay.
because that's Housing Trust Fund money.
Sarah, can I suggest that you defer that particular item until after you consider the resolution, and then it would be in order to consider the resolution because it's for payment of a contractual expense that would be proposed to be paid pursuant to that extension agreement. So just in order of operations, I think you ought to consider the contract extension first and then authorize payment under the contract. Okay. Just today, but just, defer that particular item and then take it up again after the contract. Okay.
I don't see why we couldn't do that. So I suppose let's just consider the first 4 that I mentioned. Here's our bank reconciliation statement from this last month. We have $60,000 in the bank. That includes the deposit from the Hudson Housing Authority, and no outstanding checks here. And then we can have a look at our balance sheet. There's the Housing Trust Fund account. Other than that, not much has changed. So we have 4 bills that we're considering right now. Do we have a motion to pay the bills? Or do you have any questions?
I'll make the motion on the bills.
Okay. I heard Ravonda first.
Either way, I'll second. Fine.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thanks. Okay, so then let's go ahead and move on to well, I suppose we should, we want to consider the contract adjustment first?
Mhm.
In which case I would invite,
I
Chris.
think Chris said yes.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
she, yeah.
Okay, she's getting her papers together.
Oh, did you want me to present the resolution, Sarah?
Oh, or sure, maybe just summarize what we did.
So I have a resolution that would amend the agreement between the city and HCDPA for the original agreement was to cover the housing justice manager and AHDP, but that part, the HDP part, has been completed. So the proposed rider that's been prepared would extend the services for housing justice manager through December 2022 for the original services, and to provide that the salary and fringe amounts for that period is part of the original budget, and then it covers the extension further covers salary and fringe for Q3 and Q4 of 2022, proposed to be paid from the Housing Trust Fund. And as I understand it, and Michelle, perhaps you can provide that report to the board. The Housing Trust Fund Committee has recommended this use of funds, right? Because this HCDPA is looking for always a recommendation from the Housing Trust Fund Board for the expenditure of funds out of the Housing Trust Fund. And I'll come back to you in a minute. But so that proposal then would be to pay the salary and fringe for Q2 and Q3 out of the Housing Trust Fund. And the amounts, good, you have that up. And the amount set forth there. So $13,750 per quarter as salary, and then the fringe is stated here as $61.76 per quarter. And then the further extension is for the activities from January 2023 to December 2023. And then the salary and fringe for that period would be $20,000 a quarter in 2023, and then per quarter, that's per quarter. And then fringe and other expenses, a total of $30,000 for the 4 quarters of 2023. And that would be based on quarterly reimbursements to the city for those expenditures. And there is an attachment to the rider because the services that were carried out under the original ALDN agreement have essentially been completed for the most part. This uses the description of the housing justice director's position to summarize activities to be carried out by the city, because of course HCDPA is paying the city for these services, right? So there needs to be a description of the services that are being carried out to justify the expenditure. And so this is sort of taken from that, which is completion of any remaining reporting for the ALDN grant, staffing the Housing Trust Fund Committee, assisting with annual budget for the Housing Trust Fund, reports and so forth, recommendations to the HCDPA for those expenditures, and assistance with contracting for services for those expenditures. And then the rest of these items are essentially taken from the Housing Justice Director's description. of the types of things that they're doing, managing the implementation of the Affordable Housing Development Plan, managing implementation of the Strategic Housing Plan, and so forth. And at the bottom, looking for monthly reports to document completed activities and proposals for the next quarter. And I think that Michelle has been providing reports to the HCDPA at each of their meetings. So that's the intention of this provision and the intention of the resolution to approve that rider for that extended contract period and from those two different sources of funds.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Nope, this is what we needed in place to be able to ensure it's like city created position paid for by another entity that reports through us. So Chris, correct? Like these are the vehicles through which now we are regulatory and governance-ly in line.
Right, that's the intention.
Yep.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Or are there any other questions?
Absolutely.
I was just gonna add that the minutes from the Housing Trust Fund Board meeting with the roll call votes and the documents approving the salaries all up on the city under the documents, and then the meetings are also on the YouTube channel. So
And the Housing Trust Fund recommended approval of these funds for this purpose, correct?
yes.
Thank you.
I'm ready to vote. I am too. Thank
So I
you.
think the Madam Chair, you'll want to call for a motion on the resolution.
I am going to put a motion on the floor for resolution
Authorizing amendment to city
authorizing.
subcontract.
That's exactly what Sarah said.
Here it is.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, and a second.
Second.
Okay. And I guess let's do a roll call vote. Chair Smith, how do you vote? All right, Vice Chair Johnson, Secretary Wallace,
Aye.
and Mr. Moranti.
Aye.
Okay, great.
And Teresa's here as well.
Oh, and Teresa, sorry. Did Teresa vote?
Okay.
Okay, great. I will record those votes and include that resolution in the minutes. Okay, so thank you for that, everyone. And I guess that means we can now return to the matter of the invoices. So let me pull them up. So then this is us reimbursing the city of Hudson for Michelle's salary. Thank you, Michelle, for clarifying. So this is Q2. So this is something that this will come out of the HCDPA general account, and is basically sort of cleaning out the remainder of the ADLN. Is that correct? Or there's that in the BFJ.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And so that's almost everything. And then here, this is for Q3. That's right. And we don't have one for Q4 yet, just Q3.
Correct.
Because
Yeah.
we're still in Q4. Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, exactly. So so this we will have to follow up with it. I'll have to order some checks for the Housing Trust Fund account. So we're only looking at this one here. So do we have a motion to approve this expense?
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I want to add something. I just want to add how wonderful Michelle has been from the day she got here, and she's really a great asset for the city of Hudson. And I just want to thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Here, here. Thanks for your work, Michelle. With that, our only other order of business today is to hear from Michelle about the ADLN, the end of our ADLN term. So I'll hand it over to you, Michelle.
Could I just ask a question, Sarah? So you did not take up the July to September invoice to approve for payment?
Oh, I didn't take them up. Okay, that's a good question. I suppose we should approve them separately.
Well, I just was confused about whether the board was approving both of these invoices or just one.
Well, I might have done that in a confusing way. Because I think I was saying that we were only going to be paying this one out of the HCDPA account, this first one.
Right.
But so I suppose let's have a separate vote for this expenditure from the housing trust
Right,
fund.
because getting checks is administrative. You don't need to hold up approval, right? If you have the funds. Okay.
Okay, good catch. Thank you. Do we have a motion
A motion.
and a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'll hand it over to Michelle.
Okay, so I'm gonna give a closeout ADLN summary and then kind of give you an overview of what's coming up for the Housing Trust Fund. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So first, the grant is going to finish December 31st. I clarified with Enterprise yesterday that the Housing Trust Fund is considered the grant is finished. Like that money is not still being dispersed through Enterprise. The Housing Trust Fund is like a completed activity according to Enterprise. So as of December 31st, the ADLN is finished. So the only things that were remaining in terms of funds in that account is what you just approved with my salary invoice, the BFJ housing consultant you just approved. And the last thing is there's about $1,900 remaining that we underspent on attorney fees because I didn't get her final invoice until a couple weeks ago. So according to the ADLN plan that was approved by Enterprise and the team, any remaining funds will just be moved to the Housing Trust Fund. So that 1,900 just moves to Housing Trust Fund.
You'll need the resolution to do it just for the reporting purposes. You're correct.
Okay, so I guess just wondering if that's something we do, I guess in the January meeting then? I need to get the exact, okay. I'll just get the exact number from Sarah because it's a number and change based on what my fringe was. So we'll do that in January. And then in terms of the grant activities, so Hudson Roots Promise Neighborhoods dispersed all the $21,000. So they helped 16 households, which was 52 people. And as of yesterday, all those people are still stably housed in those in their apartments or houses. The amounts really ranged from $250 to $2,700. So the team there did a really good job of figuring out like what exactly was needed and working with the landlords and the tenants or the homeowners. It was mostly back rent, but there were a few mortgage payments that were also made. Promise noted that a lot of the other rental relief funds have evaporated or dried up over the past few months, and this is one of the few remaining programs. And so this has been really helpful for a lot of people. And I've been really impressed with what they've done with a small amount of money. And so something we're looking to do that the Housing Trust Fund Board voted on is to continue funding this program in 2023. So I'm going to get to that a little bit later on, but just wanted to give this summary for you. The next activity that's wrapping up, so BFJ, the housing consultants, they're finishing up their final deliverables. So they had 5 deliverables for housing policies. Just because the email's been down, I haven't been able to do a final review with them, but we're working on that Thursday. I have a final meeting with them. So I'll share those memos they have with you at the end of the month or early January. And they also offer to make any presentations, probably the Common Council, but if anything, anyone on this board wanted to learn more, they offered to hop on a call and present any of their findings or recommendations for us. So that's wrapping up on time. So that's ADLN. The closeout process is really simple because the bulk of the work was done in March. And so Enterprise just wants me to kind of write a summary, and I've been providing them updates each month. So that'll be done very soon. Any questions on that before I move on to the Housing Trust Fund? Okay, cool. So Housing Trust Fund, the board met last Monday. We had a really good meeting. Again, the minutes are all under their page on the city website. The meeting is also on YouTube. So they approved a budget for 2023. That's the overall line items. Most of this is also what you all looked at in October. So I'm going to give you a formal written document to you at the end of the month so that you can review it to if you would like to vote on that in January. Most of these things we've already discussed in detail. We've discussed the HCDPA overhead. We discussed my salary. So the thing I want to talk about right now is the program fee. So they have $150,000 budgeted. We discussed that in our October meeting. And so I just want to break down what that looks like so you know what's coming up. So that 150,000 is broken down. This is what the Housing Trust Fund Board would like to do, is to have 3 rounds. The first round is going to be focusing on housing policies and eviction prevention. And those are activities that the board would like to choose and recommend to you in January. The second round is a competitive grant cycle that would be in the spring. And then if we have funds left over, we would do a round 3. So to show you the timeline of that, in October, you all approved the general Paris line items for the Housing Trust Fund. So we're sticking with that, but we have to give you a more detailed line item of what that breaks down to. So today I'm presenting an overview so you understand what steps are coming. In early January, so the Housing Trust Fund Board worked through a general idea of what they want to do. They gave me a direction of what research they want me to work on this month to give them some more fleshed out proposal details so they can vote on that at their January meeting. So then I can give you all a very formal budget proposal to look over and review early January, give you some time to think about it, give me any questions. And then if you would like, you can vote on that in January. That's the round 1 funding for those policy items, which I'll get to in a moment. And then the grant competitive cycle, our idea is that we would spend January, February, maybe March, kind of doing outreach, and outreach would be doing things like maybe some developers, some roundtables, helping developers understand what the funds could do, working with community groups to understand it. It's a brand new source of money. And so we have to kind of build up the relevant applicants to know what the funds are and what can do and help them apply. So we're working on building that up. I would be doing technical assistance. And then once we get applications in, the Housing Trust Fund Board would do a first pass at reviewing them late winter, early spring. We've been working on creating a rubric of grant guidelines to help them guide those applicants, the application process. And then they would recommend awardees to you to review in the spring. So that would be the late spring. So that's kind of that timeline process. So it'd be 2 rounds of approvals from you all. First is that round 1, and then later in the spring, a round 2. So to get into a little more detail on that, the round 1, they $50,000 budgeted there. So the board at the December meeting, they approved, they would like to give $35,000 to Hudson Roots for 2023. One thing that I have to discuss with them is that Hudson Roots hasn't taken any admin fee. They said it's been taking them a little bit more labor on their end than they thought to deal with all the landlords. So they're asking for a 5% admin fee, which is very small. We're looking at $1,700. So I'm going to talk with our Housing Trust Fund Board to get a formal vote on this in January. And then if that looks good to you all, we could extend the rider with Hudson Roots through 2023. The second piece is that the Housing Trust Fund Board would like to spend $15,000 studying some housing policies. So these are things they asked me to research and look into this month, get them some ideas of what that would look like, some examples from other cities, some kind of cost estimates. And once they talk about that, vote on that in January, I'll send you those proposals to review before the January meeting. So that's round one. Round two is the competitive grants. So I just kind of fleshed that out. We have a $100,000 budget. We'll do the outreach. Like I said, I'll do the technical assistance, they'll score, they'll recommend, they'll review. If we don't get really strong applications we like, we'll hold off on spending the money. We might do a round three. It's really, we want to find really strong projects. And this is really a learning experience the first time around that we do this process. So the next steps for you all, I'll be sending you by early January. So those BFJ, the consulting memos, the Hudson Routes closeout report, and the ADLN closeout report. So the end date is December 31st. You can expect those first week of January. And then after our Housing Trust Fund board meeting in January, I'll send you their proposed budget that has more detail fleshed out, kind of describing what policies they want to pursue. So you all can think about that, review that. And I'll also send you the grant guidelines that we've been working on. So the idea being that if you all would like to, you can renew Hudson Routes at the January meeting. So that's kind of an overview. Any questions? Okay, cool. Then I'll be in touch end of the month with all that. I'm sure our email will be back by then. Thank you all.
This looks good.
Thanks. You're muted there.
Thanks. All right.
Michelle, will you provide that copy of that report to Sarah to put with the minutes or to put on the website,
Yes.
please? Thank
Well, that's all that we have for the day. So I guess I'm really excited to see these reports coming in January. Thanks, Michelle. We have space for public comment. And absent any public comment, we could have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion. I second.
Thanks. All in favor?
Hi.
Okay, great. Thanks, y'all. Now, I will ask that if you can go ahead and get your signatures on the checks in hand, and I'll either mask up and come get them, or have someone come pick them up later today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye all.
Bye.
Thanks.